something I hate to admit is that we invited people to take pictures of their homes if they could not identify their style. Does anybody have any pictures to look at? Okay, great. What have you got? We'd love to see it. Okay, thanks. Well, that's a nice photo. Oh my goodness, you've got a whole dossier on this. I have to admit, I've been to your house many times. I think it's delightful. You've done a very good job with it. Okay, this actually represents okay. I'm going to backtrack here, even though we don't have photos of some of these homes, but I'm going to show them anyway. Okay, does anybody recognize this house? It's got a sign in front of it, which recommends that it is an important building. And I'll tell you, the name is Elmwood Hall. Has anybody heard of this wonderful building? It is a house in Ludlow that is very, very old. In fact, it is one of the oldest buildings in Ludlow and possibly all along the riverfront. It was built for Thomas D. Carneal, who was a very important person in the early development of northern Kentucky. That was the former picture okay, this was the front of the house, which, like a smart person, he oriented it to face the river. The river was a very different sight in those days. And this is the back of the building. This is an example of the Federal style, which is probably the earliest surviving old architectural style in what is northern Kentucky. And this is the back of it. Some people who lived in this part of Ludlow, or the western riverfront, might recognize this as having been a candy factory at one time. I forgot to give you the date. Federal style is, probably was in this part of the country. It's known for symmetry, classical details, simple but elegant, and its premiere was 1800 to 1820. Talk about the Wayback Machine. Similar, recognizable, is also Greek Revival. It was greatest period of prominence was 1820 to 1840. It was based on classical Greek temples. And in northern Kentucky, this building exemplifies it. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Taylor Mansion. It was, went through various kinds of alteration. One wing was removed, another one was moved around, and it was reoriented to face Overton Street, which was becoming in the neighborhood. And you may recognize it as such if you live in Mansion Hill. It's a beautiful building. It eventually was turned into a law office. Presently it's vacant, and we're hoping that something good can be done with it. That was a picture of the front, obviously. It's a side view. And this is an old picture. This is what it looked like in the old days, long, long ago. And it has some of the characteristics that exemplify the Greek Revival style. You can see the pediment in the front of the building, and you can see this little entry portico in the front. Also the alternating quoins and corners of the building. And this one, you can vaguely see here because the picture's kind of vague. That part is not there anymore. There are a few pictures. A smaller, but still elegant and clearly recognizable as Greek Revival. This is the building in downtown Newport that at one time was a dock. In fact, I'll backtrack here. This building was a family home for one of the wealthiest families in the community, and it was later became part of a row of buildings that had doctor's offices in them. And this one still does. It's owned by a family that still is a doctor family. And they take very good care of it. It is very well maintained on the exterior. You notice some of the features that exemplify it is one, this doorway. Exemplifies a type of doorway that was very popular around the time. And it has, two different kind of windows you can notice. 1/1 panes on the first floor and 2/2 in the second. I think that these upstairs might possibly have been replaced, or they might have removed the muntins for some reason or other. Anyway, the doctor who has an office in there takes very good care of the building, and we're very pleased about that. You can also see, if you look at it, this didn't show. If you were looking at this from the side, from the street, you would see that it has what is called a stepped parapet on the roof. That was one of the hallmarks of the Greek Revival style in those days. And there you have it, based on classical Greek temples. Yes?
Would it be possible to turn off the light? Would that bother you?
It wouldn't bother me, no.
Okay, I think we could see the...
You can see it better? Good.
Yeah, it sadly blows out the camera.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Never mind. Never mind.
Okay. Now, there are actually several Greek Revival buildings scattered throughout northern Kentucky, but the next style that I'll show you is the Italianate style, was by far the most prolific style of early northern Kentucky. Many of these buildings remain today. Now, I have to admit that I absolutely love this building. This is one of my favorite buildings in all of Cincinnati, greater Cincinnati area. It was, I think, the home of a banker, and I could understand where he made his money because it's certainly reflected in this building. Now, if you happen to be walking down the street, you might notice a couple of things that you did not expect. Many features of this Italianate house are pretty recognizable. The 2/2 windows in the front, the arched windows on 2 stories, the recessed entry there, and of course the cornice with a little half-arched windows. What's something I'm going to backtrack a little here. If you look around the side of the building, you can see that those buildings in that side wing over there has 2/2 windows. Well, this is unusual for a mansion like this, for someone who obviously had wealth. 1/1 windows were more expensive than these 2/2 panes, but rich people usually put their 1/1 or single pane over single pane windows in the front facade because they wanted to show off that they could afford it. That's something that hasn't changed from this day very much. I believe this house just recently changed hands. I hope that whoever purchased it is doing well by it, because it certainly is deserved. It is an absolutely beautiful house. I was able to go in the house one time when the old owner was still under ownership. Okay, another view from the main facade on Central Avenue. There actually is a cluster of very nice Italianate buildings right on this end of the street. This exemplifies a type of building that was popular for people who had some extra money in their hands. It's 2 bays wide, 2 windows and doorway, add up to 3 bays. And it's a fairly large house by 19th century standards, and that is why. Okay. Now, if you go up the street a few blocks, on Columbia Street, you will find this row of 2-story, 2-bay Italianate row houses. And you can see some of the characteristics that were exhibited in that house I just showed you. In this house, this is a row house, so the houses all these houses are connected, and they were probably built in maybe the 3rd quarter of the 19th century, possibly a little bit later. They're all fairly handsome and fairly look alike. Some of these have exhibit another mark of affluence of sorts. The 3 row houses in the center have floor-to-ceiling windows. That is somewhat more costly than the more typical shorter windows. And you may wonder about these porches that are found on 3 of these houses. They all appear to have been built in, say, the mid-20th century, perhaps. Don't know exactly when. These buildings were kind of rough looking at the time when I took the photos, but they are actually doing better now that some of them are under renovation. A successor style to the Italianate style in northern Kentucky was the Queen Anne, which was very popular here. It was kind of a reaction to earlier, more formal style, and includes eclectic details of the decoration there. And there's a Queen Anne masterpiece for you. I really, really love this building. A friend of mine was nice enough to take all the photos for me, which certainly deserves the high quality credit he think he can work. This was the home of Thomas McIlvaine. He was a wealthy and successful person whose his obvious affluence is evident in the building. There are all kinds of stories behind this that unfortunately I don't have time for. One of the things recently happened for the good of this building is that it found a new and sympathetic owner who takes very good care of it and has brought it back to life from a period of time when it was rather run down. And he managed to trace down these absolutely exquisite stained glass windows and restore them and reinstall them, which I've been delighted to see for the day. Now, some of the delightful touches that you will see in here are, first, original slate roof has been restored and repaired. You'll see finials that stick up from this turret. That's a half round there too. And also, if you look over the front entrance walkway, you see a mosaic in the gable above the door. Yes, this building unfortunately fell on rough times, but with its new owner, it is thriving once again. Yes.
Where is it?
3rd and Overton Streets, across from the Taylor Mansion. Closer shot here, you can see this up a little better. Something I've always wondered about was the house next door, which is smaller and less elegant and probably much less costly. I believe that was built for Mr. McIlvaine's. Okay. Across the street, there are 2 additional Queen Anne houses. They are not in the category of the house on the corner, but they are certainly worthy of our enjoyment and incentive too. You notice that one of them has, the one to the left, has a full tower, and the one on the right is slimmed down a little bit with a turret. That means that the turret is a little tower that's stuck on the side of a building. But they're not, the turrets are not on the first floor, they're on upper floors. You also will notice, if you look at this house on the right here, that there is curved glass in the turret window. Curved glass was very costly in those days and continues to be today. So that is again another mark of affluence. And over those beautiful focal windows in the main facades next to the doorways, you'll see two more examples of beautiful art glass. These two porches also are very similar. Some of the details differ, but some don't. And this was actually put in, this picture actually was put in the wrong place, but there were two, in a way I'm glad that this occurred, because this got to show us yet more buildings on the west side of Newport. And one of them has been renovated, and the one in the middle looks like it's in need of some more work. The one on the end looks to be popular.
Yeah, the middle one was just renovated.
That's what I thought, because this is kind of an early photo. It looks great. Was that the city who did that?
Pardon?
Was that done by the city?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah, they do good work. And another popular style of the colonial revival from 1890 to 1950 was based on late 1700s United States styles of various kinds. Okay, and here is an example of a Dutch colonial. This is just one example of the type of Queen Anne house that gained in popularity in the early 20th century. Okay, you notice that one thing about it that is a mark, kind of a mark of age, and that is this hollow core concrete block construction. It looks like real stone from a small distance, but if you get close to it, you will see that it's actually something else. And it still has its original slate roof that's very commendable. They filled it in with some, apparently some of the slates had become damaged, either blown off in a storm or simply deteriorated and fell off. But the vast majority of the roof is still intact, and we're delighted to see that. Okay. It also looks like it has, at least on the front, original windows that appear to have one or one panes. Can't really tell from the porch. That's the shade. Okay. And another early 20th century American style that gained a great deal of popularity in, you can see, 1910 to 1930. Simplified practical design was a hallmark of it. And here's a pair of very handsome buildings. They're similar. They look to have been perhaps the work of the same builder or same architect. These stout brick porches and the hipped roof and the dormers and the stout chimneys, these are all hallmarks of that style, which is very, as I said, is very popular in the early 20th century. Okay? And there is an absolutely beautiful example of this style. The new owners of this house at one point in time were able to renovate this house, actually restore it because it had fallen on hard times. And were able to renovate and restore the building with a grant from the Kentucky Heritage Council. I believe they use historic tax credits. You can see that is the original hipped roof. It's all tile. The tile is in great shape and is just a beautiful addition to Nelson Place. Also the nice porch, also the front porch is in great shape. If you look at the front doorway, it's kind of hard to read because it's dark there and sheltered by the porch. There appears to be leaded glass on either side of the doorway. Okay. And another one of my, I have to admit, one of my favorite house types is the Craftsman bungalow. I love them. I like Foursquares too, but I like bungalows even better. In 1910 and 1930, they like natural finishes and materials. Part of it was a, part of the ascendance to recognition of this style is it was a reaction to fussy Victorian styles, fancy styles. I just absolutely love this bungalow. I think it's one of the, actually one of the best in the city. Mm-hmm. I believe this building had some issues at one time, but it looks to be, whatever harm was done to the building appears to have been completely repaired. You can see that this is original brick there and original frame. There's some Japanese looking influence. It's on Monroe Street. Interesting thing about this building is in a block of buildings that are for the most part tall and narrow in construction because they're on narrow lots, so that they're kind of squeezed in there. Well, this one, I think there's, I don't know how much space, if any, is left on either side of the porch here. And made me wonder, one where they parked their cars, they had one, and whether they came and went through the alley, that I don't know. But anyway, it's an absolutely lovely house. Okay, a very nice, another nice picture from the side. And I really like this nighttime view because it not only shows you this building here, but it shows it's a dramatic view up the street in the late evening. There's so much more that I wish I could say about these buildings because they are all different and they're all fascinating. At one time, this part of northern Kentucky, or these communities in northern Kentucky, all kind of fell on hard times. Some more than others. And we're glad that so many of them are now being appreciated and are being saved. Any questions? Very good. Thanks for being part of the restoration weekend. Oh, and I have to admit that the last few pictures of the bungalow, those weren't taken by me. They were taken by a friend who's a cameraman. And he takes very good pictures. Thank you for being here today.
Would you go back a few slides?
Oh, sure, I'd be happy to.
So the Italian example that you were showing, my neighborhood has a mix of those and American Foursquare.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about Craftsman, but does that help age the neighborhood? Does that talk about, or I know there's a difference between when like a neighborhood may have been platted versus when it was actually developed. Is there anything you can speak to on that?
It depends what part of Newport that you were in. Oh, are there any pictures in particular you want to see again?
Well, yeah, so that kind of style is fairly common, not that ornate. But
Oh, certainly not.
that kind of style I'm in Austinburg,
Mm-hmm.
in Covington.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another neighborhood I like very much.
Yeah.
Interesting story about this house here, that the original owner was a banker. Now, which bank he was involved with, I don't know, but I think he was also a person who was in the whiskey business. That probably was a side business. And I believe he ran into trouble with the law at one time, which makes for what you call a more colorful past. Newport has a lot of that, as do some other communities today. And that is our Greek Revival beauty today. And that, of course, is the Taylor Mansion, which we've all seen and know.
So, okay, another question.
Mhm.
If you can go back to the one that you were saying was Greek Revival.
Yeah.
With the, sorry, forward, it had the green shutters.
Oh, yeah.
I think if you go forward, maybe 7. Keep going forward to the green shutter with the green cornice. A couple more. That one.
Okay, yeah, that's,
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's the doctor's office.
I would have, I guess the difference between this and Italian Nick, is it just that there's a bracketed cornice? Is that the main difference?
The stepped facade in the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also has a gentle in the cornice that sort
Mhm.
of gives the.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's classicism at work.
So I've got a question for you, Margo.
Mm-hmm.
So on the Queen Anne, when you went
Yeah.
to Jim Price's house,
Yep.
there's the mosaic and the gable on the porches. That's.
Yep.
I've not ever noticed that anywhere but other than Newport.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if that was just a local. And one of the things that around the same time,
Mm-hmm.
the pottery was working on Elm Street, Kensington.
Oh, that's right. I
And
forgot
also
about that
Cambridge-
overlap in styles.
Yeah, and Cambridge was probably at the, or Covington was
Mhm.
going about the same time. So I wonder if they just bought the tiles, the seconds and thirds on the tiles and broke them up for the mosaics.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
So this picture specifically, I think you said it really quickly, but I heard that the owner tracked those stained glass windows
He
home
did.
in California. Was it?
Yeah.
Do you know any more history about that? I mean, how did they get sold?
Yeah, I'm not sure it was California or someplace else in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, the question I always had was why weren't the owners thrown in jail or prosecuted?
Good question.
Yeah, so that's my main beef with it, because the owners sold the stained glass out.
Right.
I understand that they had poor health or whatever, but they sold it, and a Cincinnati architectural salvage house, I won't mention any names.
Oh, yeah.
But
I won't either.
who a lot of Newport stained glass went through over the years, but
Yeah, unfortunately.
I won't say fenced it,
Mhm.
but it's
Yeah.
close to it. And
Yeah.
he tracked it down.
Yeah. And whoever did that tile job in there did a very good job. I've seen some other owners who, and I'll admit they probably tried to do their best, and they probably weren't, artists at hand, but weren't nearly as good. It's just such a beautiful house. And also this kind of spooled, I don't know what else to call it, design in the posts there underneath are also somewhat distinctive. And I've seen them also in some other places, but this is probably the best example. And their stained glass is absolutely exquisite.
So he did a masterful job of restoration.
Yeah, he really did.
When you talk about the houses falling on bad times, is there just one event that made these areas go from being like high and rich people area to kind of more rundown homes?
A couple of things happen, maybe, the ones that I'm most familiar with is, first, there's Great Depression, of course, and also,
Income tax.
yeah, income tax, certainly.
And
Many of the larger homes in northern Kentucky that at one time were single-family residences, were cut up into multifamily units so that they could pay the mortgage or whatever, or just to make a buck. And most of them were not well maintained. We're all familiar with that condition, unfortunately. Anything else you want to see again? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very pleased to be here today. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot one. Sorry about that. Okay, this is an example of one of the most prolific architectural built house types of the late 19th and early 20th century. It's, I call them a two-bay Italianates because they're tall and narrow residences on narrow lots that have bracketed cornices. That their attic here also has windows in it that you can see. You can see some really small little dentils below the cornice. This is basically what I like to call it, a two-bay Italianates, because it's 2 windows wide. 2 windows that also, and on the first floor also include a door. So thank you very much for bringing those pictures today. And I thought, I'll just pass these pictures around for you. Yeah. Found some more information here. This is the, okay. 128 of the Williamson edition. So now we know what the name of the land is. Oh, and has anybody ever seen one of these? Sanborn maps. These are fascinating. You can literally work at them all.
So then,
These are wonderful things to use to try to date a building. Because in between 2 different issuance of two different maps, if it falls in between, you know that's approximately when it was built.
yeah, if you look on them closely, you'll see at the back, they're normally, these little things are probably their outhouses.
Yep, exactly.
And it will also tell you the original composition, if it was a brick house or frame house.
Yeah. Pink is masonry and yellow is frame, and then there's also blue, which is something else. Those are usually commercial buildings.
And you might think, well, you can easily tell a brick house, right? Well, unfortunately, on the west side of Newport, there's several brick homes that have been siding, aluminum siding.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, so, which even though it sounds like ridiculous, people did it. So,
Why do you think they did it?
Pardon?
Why do you think they did it?
Either wanted to brighten up their house, modernize it.
Yep.
You know, the same with you find the porches that were put on the houses, mostly in the 20s. And there was a 1920s campaign by President from Marion, Warren G. Harding. And he had what was called the Front Porch Campaign at
Yeah.
the time. And all of a sudden, front porches became a rage. Yeah, so I always found it so odd that you see all these striking Italians and somebody stuck a 1920s porch on it.
Oh, another one, this was a house that was for sale in the East Royal Historic District. And the reason I wanted to point that out is because this delightful two-bay tenement there has got the corner points and a lot of other details that appear to be original. That looks to be in good shape too. They got construction date on this.